So, hello everybody, and today I'm here talking to Steph Caswell, who I actually knew of long before she knew of me, but I never knew she was an ex-teacher because I was following her Facebook page, Making Happy Writers.
That's right.
One of my clients found you and said to me, "Oh, you want to follow this page? It's really interesting, it's really good." And she was writing her book at the time. Um, so, Steph, tell us, please, before we get into the whole what you moved on into, let's just have a bit of a picture about your teaching career, if you don't mind.
Of course, no problem. So I started teaching in 2004. I was a primary school teacher and I began in Key Stage 1 and then had my two children and ended up in Key Stage 2 in Year 6 for a few years. And then I moved to be a Key Stage leader, then an assistant head, and then finished my career as a deputy head of a small primary school locally to me. So yeah, just did the sort of usual leadership type of route that some people find themselves falling into.
Right, okay. And at what point in that journey did the doubts about the longevity of your teaching career start? I mean, was there a particular moment, a particular catalyst, or was it a gradual progress of the feeling that this wasn't going to be for you anymore?
I think it wasn't until I went into leadership really that it started to become apparent that it wasn't quite what I was hoping it would be, what I thought it would be. So when I was a teacher in the classroom, I really enjoyed teaching. I still enjoy teaching. But it was the leadership side of things that where cracks started to appear, I guess. And over time, I had started to feel anxious and overwhelmed and very stressed about the job. And I had various roles. I was Senko as well as a deputy head, and I was also part of the safeguarding team. And it was during a safeguarding meeting with a parent where things were getting quite heated because the parent was unhappy with the fact that the children would possibly be taken away from her, and understandably, emotions were high. And it was during that meeting that, unfortunately for me, she decided to aim most of her anger and her sort of abusive language towards me. And I came out of the meeting and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. So it wasn't the thing that, immediately was like, right, that's it. This is the one thing that's happened to me. It was just the final thing on top of months and months of feeling a particular way about what I was doing. And it was then that I was signed off from school for a month, and I started to think about whether this was actually what I wanted to do. And because the doctor had put me onto anti-anxiety medication, it was a conversation I had with myself where I thought, you know what, do I want to be medicated in order to teach and to do my job? And it was a realization that actually, no, thank you.
No.
I don't I don't want to be medicated in order to work for the next however many years. So yeah, it was that really that caused me to reflect and to consider what I did next.
Yeah. And so at that point, did you have anything going on in the back of your mind that could be a possible route out? Or were you starting afresh at that point thinking, okay, I'm looking around, what can I do?
I was very lucky. My head teacher and I were a very good team, and she is still one of my closest friends. And I knew that I had to have the conversation with her, and I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do, but I just knew I didn't want to be a deputy anymore. And I had the conversation with her, and she very kindly said to me, we don't want to lose you as a teacher. So would you consider doing some part-time teaching? And my husband at the time was teaching at the same school as me. And we team taught for a year in Year 6, where I worked just mornings and I didn't have full class responsibility. So I was sort of doing small group stuff and, like I say, team teaching with him, which is always an eye opener for any marriage. And but we really had a great year doing that. But it was during that year, it just gave me the breathing space to think about what I wanted to
Mm.
do without the financial worry of all of a sudden not having a job at all. So I do think it's worth, if you are in that position, talking to the people, if you can, in your leadership team, around what could happen to ease your way out if you're not ready to just step away completely, because I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah, some SLTs are nice, aren't they, and are understanding and will try and help you. If you don't want to lose good teachers, and unfortunately, a lot of the ones who do burn out are very good teachers.
Mm.
Okay, so talk us through the process then. You had that conversation, you spent a year team teaching, working part-time. So presumably in the other part of your time that you weren't in school, you were doing something about um, finding another revenue generating
Absolutely,
activity.
yes. So during the part-time phase, I started to think about doing some tutoring, because I just knew that obviously when you've got a skill set like teaching and you're in that position where you're trying to think, right, what on earth can I do now? I started doing some tuition, and obviously being at the school that I was at enabled me to sort of start to recruit some tutees who were doing things like SATs or were in year 5 and wanted some boosting before SATs. So I had sort of some children who were already interested and parents who were already interested. So I started that off doing after school tuition, and again, I enjoy teaching. I do actually enjoy, without everything else that always comes with teaching. The actual teaching is something I really, really enjoy, and I still do. But again, I thought to myself, is this actually really what I want to do? Because we can sometimes think, long term, we can panic and we can think, right, I've got to know immediately what I want to do next. And I had an inkling, because while I was a deputy, I had written some books for teachers, and I love writing. It's been a big passion of mine for over 10 years now. So I knew that I enjoyed writing, but I just couldn't really see what that looked like in reality. And, people often have these romantic notions of what being an author is all about, and that you just sit and write and, the world goes by, past you, and then you're just busy in the zone. And I knew that that wasn't something that, we could do financially, or just wasn't the reality. So I thought to myself, right, I know writing has to feature somewhere, but to give me the time to think about what that really looked like, doing some tutoring was the obvious next step, because I thought, well, that gives me a bit of income. I am still teaching part-time, and then I can start to really think about what the writing means to me moving forward.
Okay. So obviously home tutoring is an option for people. So did
Mm.
you go to the pupils' houses to do that, or did they come to you?
They came to me. I'm lucky that I have a little cabin in the garden, so it meant that there was a space where they wouldn't be disturbed for tutoring. And my dog was always a big feature for the for the children who were coming, so they really enjoyed seeing her. And yeah, I think it just gave my 2 children the space, that there weren't going to be a distraction, because 2 young boys could be, and also for the children to come and feel like it's a little space for them to do their tutoring. And yeah, like I say, I started off with a few, and then by the time I finished tutoring, which was about 18 months later, I had a waiting list, and and it had started to sort of gather momentum. And I think if you're a good teacher, and particularly after COVID, there are lots of children who are desperately trying to catch up with lessons and concepts that maybe they've missed. I think we are in demand as a profession in terms of that sort of support. So it really did start to sort of pick up, and I was making quite a good, a good income from it.
Mm. Okay, so how did you transition from that into what you're doing now, which isn't strictly speaking 100% of your time writing, but the whole
Mhm.
supporting other writers and stuff? How did that happen?
So that came off the back of me leaving my school where I was doing part time. I thought to myself, right, okay, I've got my tuition businesses that's starting to be consistent. So I stepped away from school completely and was just doing tutoring for a while. And it was only then that I started to look at, well, what can I, or how can I use my writing skills? And that came into doing various bits of writing for people. So I was doing blogs for people. I was writing off the back of one of my books, the first book. I had a teaching for Teach Primary magazine. They'd got in touch and asked if I could write for them quite regularly. So I was doing those sorts of things. So it was really just looking and seeing what the options were and realizing that there are businesses out there. I write for a learning and development company at the moment who go into schools and deliver insets. So it was that sort of thing. They wanted blogs for their education blog and things like that. So it was really looking around and seeing how could I apply my education knowledge and my love of writing and kind of mash them together, if you like, and offer that out to people, which was the starting point really. And then it kind of grew from there, where I started to look at what other writing opportunities were out there. And yeah, that's sort of how I've ended up, doing some writing for people. But and then when people found out I'd written a book, they were sort of coming out of the woodwork and saying to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book. Yeah, how do I do it?" And that sort of grew from there, really.
So tell us about that then, the whole writing coaching thing. How does that work?
So I work predominantly with female business owners who are mainly coaches and consultants who want to write a book in their niche about their particular topic that they specialize in. So it might be, for example, somebody who's doing coaching teachers of how to leave teaching. They might want to put a book together of strategies and things that can help, and they come to me. And predominantly I work with people at two stages. So it's either they're right at the beginning of the journey and they want some help to figure out, well, what's the structure of my book, what exactly is it going to be about, how am I going to be helping my reader. Or they're people who started maybe without much structure and have just tried to do it on a wing and a prayer. And they've come to me about halfway through and said, do you know what? I've now completely lost. I don't know where this book's going. I don't know if it makes any sense anymore. And I work with them to sort of pull it together and to complete it. So it's those two types of authors that I tend to work with. And I absolutely love it because ironically, it uses my teaching skills. I'm able to teach people how to write and talk to them about all sorts of things around mindset, which obviously I learned when I was still teaching about growth mindset and confidence and all those things that we do pick up as teachers that I think we do without realizing. And there's definitely a transferable skill into helping others. It doesn't have to mean that you say goodbye to teaching the skill forever. It's just who you're teaching that maybe changes.
Yeah, that's a bit of a theme with people I've talked to for this. I think once a teacher, always a teacher, really. And you just, whether it's helping people in some way, coaching people, or teaching adults, developing training materials, there's always often an element of education in it. So how do your clients find you? Because I think a lot of people, if they go solo entrepreneur, then think about, well, how am I going to get any business? How do I do that? So how do your clients find you?
It started off really through sort of word of mouth and recommendations. People's, because once you start moving in the business circle, small business circle, you start to meet people and talk to people. And because what I do is fairly different to what a lot of coaches do. Writing coaches there are not that many of them in comparison to things like life coaches or business coaches. And so people were like, oh, I'd not heard of somebody like you before. And I know someone who wants to write a book. And it started off very much like that with word of mouth. And then from there, it really was just getting to know people through networking. LinkedIn is a great place for me because there's lots of business owners on there who are very serious about moving themselves forward and making themselves experts in their niche. So places like LinkedIn, places like Instagram. Instagram's my favorite, but just because I feel at home there. But again, through that and just be sharing information that's helpful, giving people some advice. I have a podcast myself, so that also helps people get to know me and what I'm about. And so it started like that, really, just trickled in. And then once you start to get a bit of a name for yourself and you start to share your expertise and talk about what you do, then more and more people are interested and want to work with you.
And how long would you say it was between stopping the tuition completely and the point where you could say, yeah, this is working, I'm making a living doing this is a goer?
Yeah, it's not quick, and I always try to say to people that it's something that is a gradual thing, and it often appears to people that you all of a sudden you're very, you're successful at what you're doing and your business is working, and it isn't like that, because it's taken me about 5 years to get to where I am now, and I feel that, if you're going to be leaving teaching and you're looking at what to do next, is have a plan in place where you're taking small steps, because it's incredibly overwhelming. I do remember vividly telling my head teacher that I was going to leave, and I remember the sheer terror I felt, having to have that conversation with her, and what that meant for me. And I didn't have a clear idea of how I was going to get to do what I'm doing today. But it was about thinking to myself, okay, how can I do this so that I am managing that stress of leaving, and financially, and, knowing what I want to do. I don't want people to think that when you step out of teaching, you're going to have an absolute clear idea. It's often a bit of trial and error. It's often trying things and thinking, I like that, but I don't like it as much as I thought I would. And it's just refining and refining and refining. And I still have to do some writing for other people, and it's not the thing that I love the most, but I know that until I can get myself completely working with authors, and that's what I want to do, is either write my books and help authors. That's the big plan, and I'm about 75% of the way there now, but it's still something I'm working on. It's still something I'm having to build and grow gradually. So I think it's often people think, oh, it's just you step out of teaching, you step into something else. And, unless you're really lucky, that isn't the case. I think you have to have these sort of steps that you take,
Mm,
where you feel like it's manageable and it's right for you. And it's all about just learning as we go.
yeah. Did you at any point think, I shouldn't have left? I should have just stayed.
No. No.
That's
Um,
nice, but no.
I'm very lucky. My parents own a gymnastics club, and I've been involved in gymnastics since I was 2. And so every Saturday, I still teach for an hour gymnastics to some 7 and 8 year olds, who are just, yeah, absolutely crackers. But they just allow me to still do a little bit of, working with children, which they are really funny, and I really enjoy my time with them. But it does make me realize I don't miss having to deal with them all day, every day. And also my friend said to me when I was thinking of leaving, she said, and I was, I don't know what to do if this doesn't work out. I'm very stressed about this the big leap of leaving teaching and going out on my own. And she said to me something which will stick with me forever. She said, Steph, if it all absolutely goes belly up, you can just go back and be a supply teacher. And I didn't, and I, it gave me that sort of safety net where I thought to myself, oh, actually, yes, I can do that, because I'm always going to be a qualified teacher. And
Mm,
if everything does, just goes terribly wrong, then I can do that. And it never has gone terribly wrong. But just knowing that just gave me the confidence to be like, okay, if the worst comes to the worst, I can go back and do some supply for some time to get some income, or, to give myself a breathing space. And
mm.
once I realized that, it just gave me that nudge I needed to actually take the step. And like I say, I've never had to, but it's definitely there to help, when I'm in times of doubt, to know that.
Do you have times of doubt? Do you ever think, oh, I mean, imposter syndrome is quite a big thing, isn't it? Funny, I mean, as a teacher, everybody constantly, absolutely wallowing in imposter syndrome because of the whole environment and whatever. But I didn't know what it was called until I left teaching, and other freelancers and entrepreneurs started using this term. I thought, God, yeah, there's a name for that. Yeah, I didn't
Mm.
realise. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
So,
think it's definitely, I mean, times of doubt definitely will crop up from time to time. Not doubt as whether I made the right decision, never that.
no, no.
But doubts in terms of, will all the things I want to do in the future come into fruition? Will this idea that I've got for, a particular workshop or a particular program I want to run, will that work? And sometimes they don't work, and that's okay. And I think that's important too, is to know that all the ideas you might have for what you want to do after teaching, some of them will fail. And it's about thinking to yourself, right, okay, what can I take from that? Which I know is obviously that the whole growth mindset approach, but I sit down with a notebook, and if something hasn't gone right, I will actually sit there and be like, okay, what could I do if I was going to do that again? What would I do differently in terms of, maybe it's a program I wanted to run and I didn't get as many people sign up, or it might be, a particular chapter of a book that's not working. I'll always sit and actually analyze it and think to myself, okay, this didn't work this time, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work ever. It just needs some tweaking and some adapting. And I think if you can do that, then you feel like you're always making small steps of progress in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that you've encountered any major stumbling blocks, roadblocks, obstacles along the way?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's people's opinion of what you're doing is often the thing that can stop some people. So you might start saying to people, I'm going to leave teaching, and often their responses can stop you or delay you, because they'll sort of have this very over the top reaction to you saying that. And it's about, I think, battling those people rather than yourself a lot of the time, because in your head, most people, I know it was for me, have made their mind up and they're thinking, I am going to leave. And then they'll talk to one family member or somebody they know who'll say, oh, are you sure? Oh gosh, well, what are you going to do? I don't know whether and as soon as the doubts from other people creep in, then you start to second guess yourself. And I think it's about surrounding yourself with the right people who understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then when those conversations with other people come about, you can think, do you know what, it's okay, because I know that the core people that really matter to me are supporting me, and that's all that matters really at the end.
Now, you did mention that while you were still teaching, you wrote some books for teachers. Um, Tell me about those.
So when I was a deputy, I was also looked after the NQTs in the school, and I realised that they were asking me pretty much the same sort of questions all the time. And I've always loved writing. Before I wrote those books, I wrote books for children, in terms of never published, but I knew that I loved writing. And I thought to myself, gosh, I'm answering the same thing in the same way most of the time. I thought there must be a way that I can write this down somewhere. And so I decided I was going to start a book about behavior management for primary NQTs. And so I went about trying to write it. It was a very painful process. Now looking back as an experienced author, I went about it in a rather silly way, but I eventually got it written and published it in 2015. And I really enjoyed the process eventually, and I really enjoyed publishing it. And I had some success off the back. Like I said, Teach Primary got in touch with me. I went into schools and taught the framework that's in that book to some newly qualified teachers to help them with their behaviour management. And I realised, okay, there's some merit here to doing this. So I then wrote one for again for NQTs, but it was around special educational needs and managing children with SEND in the classroom, because I was a SENCO. And I also wrote one about being able to work with other adults in the school, so your TA and other professionals, which can sometimes be a bit overwhelming when you're an NQT and you've got another adult to manage. So they were the three books that I wrote whilst I was still teaching. And yes, it was off the back of those that I realized, okay, this is what I actually want to do now. So yes, they did help me eventually become, doing what I am today.
And what about since you left then? Books you've written?
And
'Cause I do remember
yeah.
seeing last year that you'd published
Mhm.
another one.
Yes, so I've done a few ghostwriting projects for some publishers, which I enjoy, but not as much as I enjoy writing them when I get to put my name on the cover.
Yeah.
But so I've done those, and then last year I wrote a book about how to write a book, and it was for business owners who are thinking about writing and they just want that sort of step by step from an idea to publication type book, so they can see the process. And that book was a finalist in the Business Book Awards of 2023, so this year. And yeah, that again boosted the number of people who wanted to work with me, because I think as soon as you have something like that under your belt, you got that credibility for people to think, oh, she does know what she's talking about when it comes to writing. So I've done that one most recently, and then I have 3 others that are still sitting in my head, but they will come out over the next couple of years. But at the moment, I'm writing a cozy mystery novel, so that's taking up my creative time at the moment, because I want to get that out next year.
Right, lovely. Okay. And have you got any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with?
Yes, I always say to people, go with your gut. So if your gut is telling you that it's time to leave teaching, and it's just something that will not stop telling you that it's time for you to leave, then listen to it, because it is a really good guiding point for you to focus on. And when you make that decision, surround yourself with good people, have faith in what you are doing, and know that there is always a solution to every problem. So if you leave and you're not sure what to do next, there are plenty of people, there are plenty of books, there are plenty of things out there that can help you make that decision. But life is too short to be medicated to teach, which is sort of my motto.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I used to sit in staff meetings and look around the room and think, you're on meds, you're on meds, you're
Mm,
on meds. You were, but you seem not so bad at the moment. You will be soon.
mm.
Just round the room. And it was just horrifying how many people
Yeah,
were, well, yeah, being medicated to do their job.
yeah,
Terrible, isn't it?
it is.
I don't want to end on a depressing note, but anyway, thank you very much, Steph, for sharing your story with us. Um, and uh, all of the details you've given me about books, etc., we'll put in the show notes so that people can access those if they want to.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.